Search efforts continue for the more than 30 passengers still missing from the Sewol-ho ferry, while the city of Ansan, where most of the student passengers are from, remains still in mourning. Attacks on civilians continue in Nigeria as Britain joins France and the U.S. in the hunt for the over 200 missing schoolgirls. The won reaches its lowest level since the 2008 global financial crisis and falls to 1,022 won against the greenback. But with that, the benchmark Kospi also takes a dip. You only need about $4 to get from Seoul to Yeongju Station, the gateway to the West Sea. A ride on the Airport Railroad Express line is just the ticket. On Korea Today, Thursday, May 8th, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And good morning and welcome to Korea Today on a Thursday morning. It's not just a regular Thursday. Today is Parents' Day here in Korea.
That's right, Parents' Day, and it falls in line with the Confucian ideals of filial piety, being good to your parents. It's also known as Hyo here in Korea. Now, it started in 1956 as just Mother's Day, but in 73, it was designated Parents' Day because we had some complaining fathers.
Right, Father said, what about us?
So we usually give carnations to our parents, but according to a recent survey, 70% of the office workers say that they would prefer giving cash to their parents as a gift, but I guess that spending the day itself with your parents would be the best gift of all.
I remember as a child making those paper carnations for your parents, and the parents would be so proud and singing that song. I'm not going to sing that song, but you know, it's a beautiful thing that Koreans have been observing for many, many decades. So remember to call your parents today, and better yet, visit them to spend some quality time with them.
That's right. So happy Parents' Day.
Right, but it is turning out to be a cruel Parents' Day for many of the families of this still missing. More than 30 passengers are still unaccounted for in the sunken Sewol-ho ferry off the southwestern coast of Korea. And Coast Guard and Navy and civilian divers are now trying to make the most of the neap tide forecast to last until the 10th, bringing the currents to their slowest. Amid concerns over the safety of the divers and search crews, one Coast Guard officer collapsed and was taken to a hospital on Wednesday, where he received cerebral surgery. More military doctors are being dispatched near the accident site to tend to the search teams. Also, authorities have retrieved life jackets and some items that appear to be the personal belongings of the victims along the shorelines, further raising fears that bodies could have been swept away in the strong tides. In the meantime, police and prosecutors have arrested and detained 4 members of Cheonghae Marine Company, the operator of the ship, for approving the overload, in addition to the 15 crew members who are under custody for fleeing the sinking ship without the passengers.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se warned North Korea against conducting another nuclear test, adding that continuation of their nuclear weapons program could come at the cost of the survival of the regime. At a weapons of mass destruction meeting at the UN Security Council on Wednesday, Yoon said that a new test would have a big impact on the strategic landscape of Northeast Asia and would undermine the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In the event of a new test, Yoon said the Security Council must fill all loopholes in the sanctions already imposed on the North, and other countries must enforce similar tough measures. North Korea has kept its neighbors on their toes with warnings of a new type of test and activity at its Punggye nuclear testing site, as well as engine tests for an intercontinental ballistic missile.
Seoul's defense ministry is reportedly looking into reducing the military-controlled area south of the military border separating the two Koreas that is mostly off-limits to civilians. One unnamed defense ministry official quoted by Yonhap news agency said the latest plan is in line with President Park Geun-hye's deregulation movement and is aimed at ensuring South Korean residents can exercise their rights of land and property. Currently, civilian access is strictly limited within a strip of land up to 10 kilometers south of the military demarcation line along the 250-kilometer border. The military-controlled zone has been reduced 3 times before the last time in 2008.
Ansan in Gyeonggi-do province is the city most hardest hit by the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, as most of the victims were from a high school there who were on a field trip to Jeju. Today we have Arirang News's Shin Se-min joining us in the studio, who just yesterday visited the city to tell us more about how people in Ansan are coping and what the city as a whole is going through. Good morning, Se-min.
Good morning, Chinju. Yes, the city of Ansan, just right near the capital, Seoul, has been left with gaping wounds since the Sewol-ho ferry disasters. Now, residents across the city have been struck the hardest with grief and mental distress, which isn't just limited to friends and families of the victims, but also to the community as a whole. A final ride around the school they once attended. For most of the 11th grade students of Tanwon High School, the drive to the campus on the slow-moving bus signifies their last trip to school. Ribbons and countless notes paint the outer campus. Letters and messages that read, "I'm sorry, please come home safe." Kim is the owner of a small stationery store right outside the school gate. He refused to speak on camera but explained 7 of his neighbors lost their children, many of whom he watched grow up. More than 300 of the 476 passengers on board the now sunken ferry were students. Nearly a quarter of Tanwon High heading to Jeju Island on a school trip.
I come out here every now and then and see those kids enter school in funeral buses. I have a grandson who is a senior and also attends this school. It breaks my heart even to think of those young ones and those families who are going through this adversity.
Gojandong, the hardest hit neighborhood. It is a working-class district comprised of simple brick apartments buildings that surrounds the school, and residents say it was home to 109 students that were on ferry. What used to be a bustling school zone filled with groups of teenagers has changed. Locals describe a stillness now brought on by the loss of so many young lives, a loss of high school. Within a couple blocks, tens of funerals take place at Korea University Ansan Hospital, one of many funeral halls in Ansan that receives recovered bodies every day. This is where surviving students also are getting medical treatment. The loss has been a blow to the city at large. The tragedy has shrouded the city of Ansan, a city of 710,000 people southwest of Seoul, where factories churn out auto parts and electronics. It permeates every corner of the community, even reaching Ansan's shopping district downtown, where the largest population visits daily. Local shop owners say their number of customers have greatly diminished for weeks now, affecting store sales and revenues, but none complain. A 3-decade-old shoe store has never seen a such slowdown.
The area is grieving over the late students, young students. Although the numbers visiting and purchasing shoes have decreased, it's completely understandable.
The majority of the consumers were those in their 30s and 40s, mostly parent-age customers. Since the accident, sales have dropped to 1/3 and less people are seen out on the street.
However, pieces of hope are being put together by the community. The city has gathered at the Mass Memorial Hall in Arirang Park to lend a helping hand. Local lawyers, mental health clinicians, pharmacists, and even taxi drivers are just a few of the volunteers who have been on site.
What more can we say? Our voluntary work, out of our own pocket, doesn't mean much, especially at a time like this. We as a community should come together to support our good neighbors in hardship.
So, Se-min, we can tell from your report the sense of sorrow, silence, and loss in the city. Now, were there any moments that captured your attention during your visit there?
Yes, Chinju, as you just saw in the report, many the corners of the main streets of Ansan weren't bustling with people at all. Actually, one store that I visited, one large coffee chain that I visited, even put up a sign that says that they will not be playing music within the stores due to Sewol-ho ferry disaster, which gives you a sense of just how deeply the city is affected by the disaster. And also stores of clothing stores and shoe stores and cosmetic stores that usually turn up a large music to attract a lot of consumers. It was very difficult to track them and very difficult to spot.
It definitely has taken an emotional toll on the entire community there. Now, amidst all of this, the residents of Ansan and the local government there are coming together from the very beginning to help out these families of the victims. Could you tell us more about that?
That's right. Since the accident, many of the family members, mostly parents of the student victims, went all the way down to Chindo, the accident site, leaving a lot of their other family members behind, mostly elderly and the young ones. So the city has started a lunchbox volunteer service where they deliver the meal for the families left waiting, and the demand has been rising ever since. And also those volunteer taxi drivers that we just saw in a report, many of them drove over 800 kilometers back and forth Ansan and Chindo, giving a little bit of relief for those affected and to commute easily. And also more individual volunteer workers are signing up to offer an extra hand at the Memorial Hall and Funeral Hall as well in the city.
I believe that it will take some time before the city of Ansan returns to its normal life, but it's really good to see that the people there and the local government are trying to help out at this very difficult situation. Thank you, Simon, for your report today.
My pleasure.
Good morning. Let's run through the front pages of your newspapers. And it is Parents' Day here in Korea. An aching void resides in all our hearts, especially in those families who have been directly affected by the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. We'll go ahead and begin with an image here on 중앙일보 in the front page here. The title of the image says Parents' Day in Pengmokhang Harbor. You can only imagine what it must be like for these families having had to part with their loved ones so suddenly and so unwillingly, particularly as we face the month of May, which in Korea is associated with various family days like today. Now, many yellow ribbons are placed all over the harbor at Pengmokhang. This one here in the picture carries a message saying, "Mom, I was so happy to have been your son." And going over to 동아일보, we'll take a look at the front page title here. The article spells out what the paper thinks is ironic about putting forth bureaucratic reform in light of the tragic Sewol-ho accident, as it is voicing out a critical viewpoint on whether the government can truly go through an innovative reform. The headline reads, "Subject of reform, MOSPA," which is the Ministry of Security and Public Administration, at the helm of bureaucratic reform. Now, the paper is pointing out a rather paradoxical factor, saying that this ministry that brought it upon itself the sense of mistrust that lingers in Korean society since the disaster is the same ministry that is taking the lead in making detailed plans to reform the bureaucratic society within the government. So the question is raised, will the bureaucratic leader itself be able to put on a true structural reform? And moving to this story here onto the side on 조선일보, the headline says, "With self-reflection, I will begin an emergency readiness movement." Now, Professor Sewol-ho is a renowned ethicist and scholar in Korea who is currently a chair professor at Kosin University. And regarding the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy, Professor Sewol said the entire nation as a whole must atone for the happening of the disaster and the lives sacrificed. He went on to say that he himself will begin an emergency readiness movement that only focuses on safety and protecting the lives of ordinary people, excluding any perspectives on politics and ideology. And going over to some business news, firstly on the Korea Economic Daily here, we'll take a look at this story. You did hear about it in our headlines earlier in the program. It says exchange rate plunges, basic line of security disappears. Now, you'll be hearing more on this also in detail later in our program, but the Korean won is at its strongest in nearly 6 years. As you see here in this image, an electronic board at the Korea Exchange Bank in central Seoul yesterday shows the local currency appreciating to 1,022.5 won against the greenback. Now, with this, exporters' fears of an ever-strengthening won have now turned into a never-ending nightmare. Analysts are saying that the won's current momentum is likely to continue for the time being. And lastly, onto the Mail Business newspaper. We'll have a look at the top story here. And the headline reflects news according to the Daily's analysis of some economic and social data released by the government. The title reads, Economic indicators show different pictures for regional governments. So a host of regional governments' indicators saw sharp changes from the 2010 local election to 2013. For instance, economic indicators of production, consumption, and employment for Chungcheongdo Province and Jeju Island improved markedly for those 4 years. Meanwhile, those for Seoul, the capital, Busan, and North Gyeongsangdo Province stayed below the average. Now, these indicators pinpoint changes in economic and social conditions according to regional governments, and thus will be used to evaluate performances of each of those regional governments. And that was a look at your newspaper headlines for this Thursday. And coming up are the stock numbers from Wednesday.
Many Koreans are making plans to take their parents out for lunch or dinner. Hope their plans don't get rained on today.
Well, it seems like the weather is cooperating. We did have some fine drizzle overnight. For more on today's weather, we'll turn to Chun Sung-cho, who's joining us from Hangang River, actually.
Good morning, Sung-cho.
Good morning, guys. I'm reporting live by the Hangang River. Currently, it's pretty chilly, windy, and cloudy outside. Fine drizzles of rain spread across the entire nation overnight. And in some parts of the central region, this is still an ongoing process. Even here in Seoul right now, the roads are pretty wet still. So people on the morning commute should be careful of slippery roads while driving on the roads. We'll see the conditions start clearing up just a bit before the midday, and all the wetness will go away by then, putting Gangwon-do and Gyeongsangdo provinces right back into the dry air conditions that they've been dealing with right before the rain. A dry weather advisory has been issued in those regions. But don't worry, another round of nationwide precipitation looks to be in store for us on Sunday, so don't put away your rain gear just yet. The rain is expected to last until Monday. Today, we have a low pressure system over North Korea and then a high pressure system approaching from the southwest. For more details, let's take a closer look at today's forecast. A mass of cold air in the upper atmosphere is still keeping the temperatures on the cooler side. Seoul and Gwangju's highs are 21, Gangneung the coolest is 17, and Daegu the warmest at 24 degrees Celsius. But starting tomorrow afternoon, just before the rain on the weekend, more sun and a warm air mass from the southwest will push these numbers slightly up. In the meantime, watch out for the big fluctuations between the highs and lows of the temperatures throughout the day. That's all I have for the weather forecast. Back to Min-jung in the studio.
International help is starting to arrive in Nigeria to help rescue the hundreds of missing schoolgirls, but violence continues in the African country with no signs of abating. We'll turn to Eunice Kim for a closer look at this story and other global headlines we're following at this hour. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Min-jung.
Fill us in, please.
Yeah, the attacks continue on civilians. At least 150 people and as many as 300 are feared to have been killed by Islamic militants in the northeastern border town of Gambor-Nagala, this according to various reports. The 12-hour assault on Monday saw rocket-propelled grenades and improvised bombs detonated in crowded marketplaces as shops and homes were set ablaze. Boko Haram is being blamed for this round of attacks as well. Meanwhile, on the ongoing search for the more than 200 schoolgirls abducted about 3 weeks ago, Nigerian police are now offering a roughly $300,000 reward for information that leads to their rescue. This as help is coming from the U.S., the U.K., and the French. Paris said it is sending security service agents there, and the U.S. Pentagon is reportedly mulling over how it can assist in the search. British officials will send a team of experts to work with the U.S. team that will establish a coordination cell at the U.S. Embassy for support in intelligence, investigation, and hostage negotiations. And in a turn of events, Russian President Vladimir Putin has called on separatists in Ukraine to postpone its secession vote, slated for this coming Sunday, to create an atmosphere for dialogue. President Putin also announced he would pull Russian troops back from the Ukrainian border, where some 40,000 men are believed to be amassed. The move is being seen by some as a possible breakthrough, though the West are still watching for signs of that pullback. Meanwhile, a leader for the so-called People's Republic of Donetsk told Reuters they would discuss Putin's call during a meeting on this Thursday.
And finally, Thailand's constitutional court has ordered its prime minister to step down for abuse of power. This is a huge development. Tell us more.
Absolutely. The court found Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and 9 of her cabinet members guilty of violating constitutional law when she transferred the National Security Council chief to another post back in 2011. Now, the ruling marks the end of a fight in the courts in the midst of 6 months of anti-government protests that had paralyzed the government and placed it in caretaker status. Ms. Yingluck appeared in court Tuesday to defend herself, rejecting allegations that she and her party had benefited from the move. But after Wednesday's court decision, she thanked her supporters for the 2 years of her democratically elected reign and maintained that hers was an honest administration. Thailand's commerce minister has been tapped to fill the prime minister post for now. The development could incite more unrest in the nation, though, as Yingluck enjoys widespread support in the rural areas. And that's a wrap of the global headlines we're following this morning.
And still to come on Korea Today, the Korean won gained more than 3% against the greenback last month, strengthening at the highest rate out of 40 different currencies. The strong won has sent export companies into a frenzy. We look at the details with Professor Yang Jun-seok.
And it's been over 10 years since this production's been on stage, and right now it's just in time for Parents' Day, and it is opening up. And our Yim Yoon-hee joins us with more on this. Good morning.
Good morning, Young. Happy Parents' Day to you.
Thank you.
In fact, happy Parents' Day to all the parents out there. So today I have a musical drama, so it's a little bit lighter in terms of content than a regular average musical per se. And for this performance, they've cast some veteran actors who many of our parents might be familiar with. So let's take a look.
It's the very first night, but she's already been abandoned by her husband and left to fend for her child. This story is about a woman's fate. A Fleeting Spring Day is a musical drama, sometimes called an operetta, and hasn't been on the stage since 2003. After an 11-year break, this performance is back with a veteran cast.
This is the first time I'm doing a musical drama, and it's honestly a little tricky starting from the lines to the whole performance.
It's a mix of light music, dancing, and acting set in a traditional time period weaved together on the stage. The result is a crowd pleaser, especially for the middle-aged audience.
Not only is this musical drama good for the younger generations, we're recreating the songs from the old Madang Nori. But it would be a waste if we just stopped there.
This lighthearted production has been away from the stage for years. But this recent revival is already piquing the interest of many, especially the actors, who have each had years of experience in the business.
I've been doing musical dramas for 15 years, but this is the role I've wanted to do the most. Also, this type of acting is an upgraded version of the acting I did 10 years ago.
In a market mostly controlled by foreign productions, this Korean traditional musical drama will hopefully bring a boost to the Korean domestic market in A Fleeting Spring Day.
So it's labeled an operetta, and it's just, I think, the perfect generation for my parents' generation or our grandfather's generation. They saw a very transitional time in this period of, a transitional time in Korea.
Exactly.
So when you look at the scenes from that operetta, I'm sure they'll be able to relate very, very well.
Right, that's what people have been saying. So when it first debuted in 2003, it was very popular. It showed at both the Seoul Art Center as well as the National Theater of Korea, so both very big venues. And so people were very excited back then, and so they were really excited that it was being brought back, so people can see the show once again.
Not to mention some familiar faces,
Exactly.
very well-known actors from TV and movies.
Exactly.
All right. And also Children's Day was earlier in the week. It was 2 days ago, or 3 days ago actually. And there were a lot of performances that were geared towards them. Now, are there some for the parents this time around?
Right, so today would be a lovely day to take your parent to, per se, an art gallery, if that's what they enjoy. There are some wonderful galleries here in Seoul. Jongno-gu area has some beautiful art galleries and some museums. But there's also some dinner shows, if that's what they prefer. So Lee Mi-ja is a very famous artist, and she has a dinner show tonight, as well as Shim Soo-bong. And so those are some, depending on what your parents want, depending, what you want to do for them. So today would be a great day to pick up some carnations and take them out in the city.
All right, well, you're going to have to hurry because today is the day, and getting tickets for some of those performances might be a bit difficult, right? But you're going to still try. All right, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And still ahead on Korea Today, if arts and culture isn't for you, then maybe a trip down to the West Sea is. You can take a train and it'll cost you less than $4 to get there. We take a ride on the Incheon Airport Railroad Express, known as the AREX. But we're not headed for the airport. We take you to the West Sea for a spring adventure, becoming a more popular option for tourists. So speed off to the seaside with Joey Mercadante.
Time now for today's news sum up. Another U.S. state has taken its first step towards mandating the dual use of East Sea and Sea of Japan for the waters separating Korea and Japan.
The so-called East Sea bill has passed the New York State Senate and now awaits the green light from the lower house. For more on this and other keywords, our Seo Mi-sorang joins us from the digital room. Good morning to you, Mi-sorang.
Good morning, Minjung, and good morning, Jinju. Let's get right into it and see what was a buzz online the past 24 hours. In preparation for Parents' Day today, many were wondering what to give their parents. While over in the States, the New York State Senate passed the East Sea naming bill. Twitter stocks took a plunge as soon as the lockup period expired, while in the music industry, 5-member group G.O.D. is set to make a comeback after 8 years, with a song being released today. The ever-popular idol group EXO broke all records in the number of pre-order sales for mini-albums, with their latest album Overdose pre-selling a whopping 660,000 copies. Now let's go back and take a closer look at the first two listing there, starting off with Parents' Day. Today, May 8th, is Parents' Day here in Korea. It's a combination of both Mother's Day and Father's Day, and it commemorates the parents' hard work put into raising their children. In Korean tradition, filial duty and honoring one's parents and ancestors is one of the most highly regarded virtues that one can have, so a day like today is a great chance to express gratitude. And to show their respect, both young and adult children give their parents a gift, as well as a type of flower called the carnation. So, how about in the opposite end? What do their parents like receiving? Well, according to one poll taken by a job search portal, I bet number 3 was clothing and accessories, number 2 was dining out together, while at number 1, 70% of roughly 1,000 respondents preferred the good old cash. So if you haven't decided what to give your parents so far, perhaps cash is the way to go. Moving on to our next issue, last March, Governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, signed into law a bill mandating that the body of water between Korea and Japan be identified as both Sea of Japan and East Sea. And it looks like the state of New York is following Virginia's footsteps. Let's take a look. The New York State Senate passed a bill Tuesday requiring the name East Sea be used alongside the currently used name Sea of Japan. The upper house approved of the bill in an overwhelming 59-1 vote. It still needs to pass the lower house, the New York State Assembly, as well, and be signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo. But if it does come into law, the dual naming will have to be used in all school textbooks approved by the state of New York from July 2016. The naming of the sea has been a long-standing matter of contention between the two countries, as Korea says the widespread use of the name Sea of Japan only became common during Japan's imperial expansion, while Japan claims that the name has been used in the international community at least since the 19th century. Meanwhile, before the voting took place, the New York State Senate also adopted a resolution that expresses condolences for the Sewol-ho ferry victims. That wraps it up for today's News Sum Up. Please take care. I'll be back with more updates tomorrow.
As the Korean won against the US dollar dropped below the so-called psychological 1,050 mark, dipping as far down as 1,030, Korean exporters are on high alert. On April 10th, the won to dollar exchange rate fell to the 1,030 range, hitting the lowest in 5 years and 8 months. The Korean won appreciated 3.05% against the greenback, the highest rate among other currencies of emerging economies. In addition, with the weak Japanese yen and Chinese yuan, some analysts are voicing their concerns on how this and the strengthened won will impact both the country's exporters and overall industries. We'll look more into what effects this gain in the won will have on the economy.
And today we are joined by Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea here in the studio to give us more details and insights on how the current won depreciation or appreciation rate goes with the current Korean economy. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, Professor
Good morning.
Yang.
Thanks for having me.
The won yesterday closed out 1,022.5 won against the greenback, the strongest in about 6 years now. And a lot of factors come into play, but disappointing performance in the U.S. economy in the first quarter contributed to this, along with other factors. Please give us some of the reasons.
Okay, well, some of the other factors is that, so there's some long-term factors and there's some short-term factors. The long-term factor is that Korean won has been appreciating for a long time. It's just that because the exchange rate itself has been on sort of a roller coaster ride, we haven't really noticed it, but it's definitely been on a downward trend for the last 2 years. And then the IMF issued a report a few months ago saying that Korean won was perhaps undervalued by about 2 to 8%. And the United States Congress has been picking up on this, saying that Korea needs to appreciate its currency. So that's probably working somewhat into here. Also, Korea has been maintaining a trade surplus for a long time. Now, for an economist, the two important things that we look at when we look at exchange rate changes is the trade surplus and the changes in interest rates. And because Korea has been maintaining a trade surplus for nearly more than a decade, and Korean interest rate is higher than the advanced country interest rate, there's a natural tendency for Korean won to appreciate. Now, there's also been some short-term factors which sort of accelerated the problem, which is that at the beginning of the month, Korean exporters tend to change their dollars into won. And in May, because we had such a long break, apparently these companies all changed their money at once. So that's why we saw such a big drop very quickly. And then the big drop, I think, sort of fed into the sort of a speculation by foreign currency traders. So that may be why we saw such a big drop yesterday specifically.
And it was on Tuesday when the OECD made an upward revision of Korea's economic outlook for this year to 4%. Now, considering the strengthening won and its impact on the nation's exports, will this get in the way of the outlook?
I don't think so. There's a lot of people who are worried because, the won hasn't been this strong for a long time. But the reports, academic reports, papers coming out in the last 5 years seem to indicate that the Korean exports are not affected as much by exchange rates as it used to be. So I don't think it'll have that big an impact. But I do want to remind people that, well, during normal times, Korean won was always around $1,000 won per dollar. Right. Just before the Asian financial crisis, it was in the high 900s. And right before the global financial crisis, it was around 1,000. So it may be that the period we had for the last 4 years was sort of the abnormal period, and we were just getting back to normality.
And Professor Yang, last time you were here, we were talking about the domestic economy and the effects the Sewol-ho ferry disaster has on it, slowing down consumer spending, right? And now we're seeing the appreciation of the won, which will, you said that it won't affect it that much, but it will have a slight effect on the export market. Now, what does this mean in the domestic economy with this combination?
Okay, well, our second quarter GDP will probably definitely take some hit, both because of the falling consumption and perhaps because of falling exports, though changes in exchange rates usually impact exports, takes about 3 to 6 months. So we won't feel it for a while, and that's assuming that this low rate continues. I think the consumption will recover because people cannot hold off purchasing forever. So for the annual projection, I think the IMF and government projections will roughly come out correct.
Okay. So
now, as for the strengthening won, I gather from your answers that this will linger for some time, and many experts seem to agree that the strengthening Korean won will likely stay for a little while. And how much can we make an educated guess roughly on how long this will linger? And also, if it becomes a long-term phenomenon, what kind of setbacks are we expecting? Obviously, exporters will be hit hard, but...
Okay, well, most large companies will probably not be hit very much. I think they were reporting that most large companies were expecting about exchange rate of 1,050 for this year. 1,020, if it holds at this level, well, that's going to be difficult, but not impossible for them, even though there are places like Hyundai Motors, which says that they may take a major hit. But what's really worrying are these small and medium-sized companies, because they're not really prepared for this, changes in exchange rates. Government has been trying to get them more interested in hedging and protecting themselves against exchange rate changes, but because of the Kiko problem that we had in 2008, where everybody got burned because they hedged in the wrong way, I think they were very reluctant to hedge themselves against exchange rate risk, so now they're very vulnerable.
And as you said, like the government has encouraged companies to hedge against the interest rate changes, but what kind of measures should the government take or will take in the near future to subside this concern about the strong won?
Well, the government, for the small and medium-sized companies, they instituted things like exchange rate insurance. Now, two problems. One is that it's not as widely known as it should be among small and medium-sized enterprises, so they don't take advantage of it. And then the second problem is the amount that they set aside for it may not be enough to cover a lot of the SMEs. So that program and other programs designed to hedge against exchange rate changes should be made larger, and it should be advertise more.
And President Park Geun-hye plans to hold an emergency meeting, I believe, with economic ministers and private experts within this week. So we'll have to see what kind of measures they hammer out there. Thank you, Professor Yang, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team, as manager Hong Myung-bo is set to finally reveal his final roster for the 2014 Brazil World Cup. And at 11 a.m. today, manager Hong Myung-bo, has decided to announce his 23-man roster a day earlier than first scheduled, will reveal to everyone the players who will head over to Brazil in June. And while he has stated that the roster is about 90% complete, injuries are still a concern for the team. And while the midfield and forward positions are pretty much set, there are still a lot of question marks in their defense. And staying with the football here, over to the women's national team this time, where the team is preparing for the upcoming Asian Cup, and they're pretty confident in the team that they have right now. And you can't blame them for the high confidence, with the team currently being led by WK League star Park Eun-sun, Chelsea Ladies FC Chi So-yeon, and Yeon Min-ji. Now, the team is set to face off against Vietnam later today before heading off to Vietnam, as they're set to face off against Myanmar, Thailand, and China in the group stages of the 2014 Asian Cup, set to take place from May 14th to the 25th. And more football, this time over to the round of 16 AFC Champions League matchup between FC Seoul and Kawasaki, as FC Seoul pulls away with a crucial 3-2 away win thanks to Yoon Il-lok's game winner in the 90+3 minutes of the match, as FC Seoul continues to shine despite their struggle in the K-League Classic. And then with that, moving over to the PGA, where the PGA Players Championship is set to take place starting Thursday. And for South Korea's Do Seung-yeol, he's a lot more confident now after getting his first win a few weeks back. Now, the 23-year-old South Korean golfer who won his first PGA title at the Zurich Classic has been invited to the upcoming Players Championship and will look forward to winning his second PGA title. The event, which is considered the 5th PGA major, will have the highest prize of the year, with $1.8 million being awarded to the winner of the event. And now finishing things off with some Wednesday night's KBO action, the Hanwha Eagles pulled away with the 8-7 win over the LG Twins, and the NC Dinos destroyed the Nexen Heroes 24-5. With the Lotte Giants beating the Tucson Bears once again 10-6. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the SK Wyverns taking on the Samsung Lions. Of course, going into the game, here we go over to the third inning of the game. Cho Dong-hwa singles to right. That's a 2-run single as the SK Wyverns take a 2-0 lead. Sixth inning up 3-0. The red-hot Lee Jae-won sends one deep here. Back. Gone, and it's 4-0 SK Wyverns. But in the ninth inning, here comes the Lions roaring back, bases loaded. Kim Tae-won hit by pitch, and it's 4-1. Next batter, Lee Seung-yup at batting. He doubles to deep right center field. Two-man scores, and it's 4-3. Bases loaded once again, and this time it's Lee Heung-yeon who gets plunked, and we're tied 4-4. Next play, Paek Sang-won at bat. He's going to fly out to left field. This one, a sac fly, giving the Samsung Lions the 5-4 lead. Bottom of the ninth inning, Im Chang-yong comes in for the 1-2-3 ninth inning save as the Samsung Lions rally back to win it 5-4. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Time now for Korea Discovered today. Recently, the number of railway road users has surpassed the 200,000 mark, and it's a great way to get to the West Sea. You can save both time and money,
and
which are
you can
precious.
get a look at the landscape as well.
That's right. Enjoy the ride, right?
All right. And joining us is Joey Mercadante to tell us all about his ride to the West Sea. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. You're absolutely right. The Airport Express Railway has become a fast and easy, convenient way to travel out to the West Sea. And this is possible because on the weekends, the Airport Express train transforms into a special travel train, which takes its travelers out to the open waters. So I feel like I'm breaking some exclusive news here. So let's have a look at my adventures on the islands near Incheon.
Let's go.
Korea's Airport Railroad Express line is winning more recognition as an up-and-coming travel course that takes visitors out to the country's West Sea.
I just love living in Seoul. But you know, sometimes I just want to get away from this all and maybe visit a beach. And the great thing about living here in Seoul is that you're never too far away from the ocean and the beach. So that's where we're going today. We don't have any time to waste. Come on, let's go.
The Airport Railroad Express West Sea train that operates in March travels out to Yeongju Temporary Station every weekend. Visitors can purchase West Sea train tickets in person at the ticketing windows or from the ticketing machines like I'm doing right there.
I saw a bicycle too. You can take your bicycle with you.
Yes, you can.
This single journey ticket will take me all the way to Incheon. I'm ready to go. All I gotta do is cross the gate and into the subway.
With just about $4, you can travel straight from Seoul Station to Yeongju Station. And if you're starting off at Incheon International Airport, well, you only need to pay less than $1. From Seoul Station to the vibrant streets of Hongdae and famous movie Avengers 2 filming site at Digital Media City, the train connects various spots in Seoul with the Incheon Airport. The West Sea train leaves from Seoul Station, and in just 1 hour and 10 minutes, it takes travelers to the country's western waters.
Up until recently, Incheon Airport has been the last stop on this line, but there is one more stop to go, Yeongju Station. And this is especially for travelers and adventurers like you and me.
The West Sea is only 50 meters away from the train's final Yeongju stop. And that's why the railway has become a popular means for transportation, connecting city dwellers to the refreshing open waters.
Yeongju Station.
Before, if you wanted to go to the West Sea, you had to transfer and take a bus at Incheon International Airport. So it was a bit inconvenient. But now you can take the Airport Express all the way to Yeongju Station. So it's great.
And there's more to this Yeongju Sea trip. Where can we find Yeongju-do's 8 famous sites? The Yeongju-do trekking course that starts from the station is filled with Mother Nature's treasures and gifts. From Masian Beach, where white sands and dark mudflats coexist, as well as Sonyo Rock Beach, known as a popular TV drama filming spot for its scenic view of small and large rocks, to Wangsan Beach's painting-like view of the red sunset.
Beautiful. Wow.
But out of all 8 breathtaking sites, I chose Muido Island. To get there, take a 15-minute walk from Yeongju Station and hop on board a ferry. "5 minutes on the ferry will take you to Muido Island, one of the sought-out destinations not far from Seoul.
Feeding the birds along the way is quite fun, actually.
Just throw it up in the air and they catch it somehow.
Exactly.
Yep. Get on the shuttle bus that operates nearby the island dock and you'll get a good glimpse of the island life and the scenery there. Especially the fog that settles in and around Muido Island in the morning is absolutely marvelous. And because of this, it has become Yeongju's 7th major scenic location. And that's not all. The island is also home to Hanage Beach, with a beautiful walking path and the ocean as the backdrop. Many TV dramas, such as Stairway to Heaven, were filmed here.
I'm headed over here. This is Shilmido, and it's a very famous spot because there's a very famous movie called Shilmido that was filmed right here, depending on the tide. Now, during the high tide, there is no access to the island. This bridge that you see right here, this sand bridge, doesn't exist. The water covers it.
It's an amazing experience to be able to walk from one island to another. And once I was there, I ran into
the island is
some
very quiet. We have the cherry blossom. The trees are starting to all the leaves are coming, so it's really the perfect time in the spring. It's a very good weekend. I would recommend my friends to do it again, to take care of the tide, and to visit this small island, which is very nice.
"10 minutes on the circulating bus gets you to an island within an island called Muido Island.
The air smells so nice. Fresh. Smells like
the sea, right?
Seawater.
Yeah, stating the obvious. And thanks to this 414-meter bridge that stretches from the western part of Muido to Muido Island, travelers can walk back and forth.
Muido is very famous for having hiking courses. Lots of places to trek. So my shoes are ready. I'm ready. Time to go for a nice trek in the mountain.
Muido Island's 2.5-kilometer Mui Si Nuri Road Running along the coast, sea, and forest is another well-known trekking course divided into 8 different paths.
I made it.
Is it as easy as you're making it look right there?
No, it's not. But even with a slow stroll, visitors can tour the whole island in about 1 or 2 hours. And at the entrance of the Yeongyudo Gojampo is the Airport City Complex Koreatown.
I'm so hungry. The ocean does that to me, makes me very hungry. And there's so many choices, so many places to eat, but I have the absolute best thing to eat on a day like today.
Here you can pick and choose all kinds of fresh and affordable seafood dishes, from seafood kalguksu or knife-cut noodles to seafood stew and grilled shellfish.
Wait, you do
It's
raw
easy
fish.
to see
Why'd
why
you go with
kalguksu is the
What
dish
was
to
something
eat when you visit the sea.
Okay, you're explaining
It's
it right now.
absolutely delicious, and it warms up the inside, and it goes
So,
perfect with
get
the
on the
view. Airport Railroad Express and experience the West Sea for yourself.
I used to go there from time to time, and the quickest way to get there is through the Airport Expressway, which you have to pay a 7,000 won toll one way and coming out as well. So you have to actually pay a toll. But for just 4,000 won, about that price, you can just take the railroad there.
Yeah.
Now, how is that experience? I mean, it's an hour.
It's great. It's like I said before, fast and easy. It's convenient, and then once you're there, the island is absolutely. The islands are great. I love visiting beaches. I love exploring islands, and the small islands near Incheon provide you with lots of beautiful scenery and adventure.
And no hassle either.
And no hassle.
No hassle. And if you like bicycles, I understand that you can take your bicycles there too?
Yes, if you like a biking course, then I would recommend the one near Unso Station, and that will take you to Shido, Shindo, and Modo Islands. Now, bikers can tour all 3 of these places in about 1 or 2 hours. Now, you can bring your own own bikes on the train at designated times. And if you don't have a bike, no need to worry. You can rent one at the parking lot of the ferry terminal or at the village hall.
There it is right there, the rental system.
They have the kiddie bikes too for the little ones.
Right. With the little seats and the baskets.
Wow, it must be so leisurely just to be biking along that seashore.
And it's healthy too, as well-being.
Exactly, healthy.
After biking, I understand that we can enjoy some mud flat experience at Masian Beach.
Yes, Masian Beach. You can have a few mud flat experiences. For example, you can catch shellfish in the mud.
So like catch your own food.
You can try your luck at a more traditional bare hand fishing. Bare hand fishing, which I heard is kind of hard. I've never tried that. Maybe I'll do that on the next one. But
well, you and I both.
And then there's also the just outdoor activities, sporting activities, and it's all for free at Masian Beach.
Right.
And kids love digging through the mud and trying to find those little shells.
That's
and think it's some kind of treasure,
And that mud is good for you too.
And the mud is good for your skin.
Put some on your face, maybe. And it's pretty amazing how you could walk to that island, among islands, just in between islands, right?
Yeah. It was the first time I can say that I've walked from one island to another. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. What's really great is no one has insisted on building a permanent bridge there, one that would, regardless of the tide, always exist, which I think is really unique and special. It feels very untouched by man, very organic. You just want to make sure that when you go, you have to know the tides, right? The tide times, because
I never know. It's just a look at the draw for me.
Website that we have on the screen
you can see it right
now.
on the bottom.
You don't want to get stuck on the other side, which actually happened to the foreign tourists that I was interviewing there. They made it over, but they weren't aware of it, and they had to sort of get their trousers a little bit wet. But, it wasn't too bad.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. It sounds like a great experience. It's not that far away from Seoul. It's just a train ride away. Just get on the train, 1 hour away, and boom, 4,000 won, you're there.
You're there. Perfect. Yeah, you're on the. Yeah, I mean, how does it get any better than that?
Yeah.
Right. A great weekend trip there. Thank you, Joey, for sharing your story with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Korea Today.
And enjoy your Parents' Day. Happy Parents' Day to you too.
Thank you to you too.
And we will see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.